A sharp, metallic tang filled my mouth as I lay crumpled at the base of the basement stairs. Standing above me was Jessica, arms still extended, her face twisted in a storm of fury and something else. Satisfaction, maybe. Footsteps pounded down the staircase. My parents rushed toward us. What happened here? Mom's voice was edged with alarm, but her eyes were locked on Jessica, not me. She fell, Jessica answered quickly, stepping aside. You know how clumsy she is. I tried to speak, to explain that Jessica had shoved me after I caught her stealing money from my room again. But every breath sent searing pain through my ribs, like shards of glass driving deeper with each inhale. I didn't fall. I managed to gasp. She pushed. That's enough, Dad interrupted sharply. We're not doing this tonight, Emma. No more of your overblown stories. I'm Emma Mitchell, 24 years old, and still living under my parents' roof while I finish my medical residency. My sister Jessica, 2 years older, had returned home 6 months earlier after yet another failed attempt at college, her third. Since then, our simmering rivalry had turned into something far more dangerous. Mom helped me sit up, and I couldn't suppress a cry of pain. I think she needs a hospital, she said hesitantly, concern creeping into her voice. No hospitals, Dad snapped. We'll deal with this at home. Like always, those words rang in my ears. Just like always, the same excuse that had smothered so many incidents in silence. The sprained wrist when Jessica flung a textbook at me. The black eye from a door accidentally opening too fast. Each time, they patched me up and buried the truth, all for the sake of preserving our family's spotless reputation. But this felt different. The pain was unbearable. I could barely breathe. She needs a doctor, Mom insisted, placing a hand gently on my shoulder. Dad's jaw tightened. Fine. But Emma, he said firmly, you know what to say, right? You tripped. You're clumsy. That's all. Behind him, Jessica's lips curled into a smug smile. She knew she was untouchable. She always had been. The perfect daughter in our parents' eyes, no matter how violent or cruel. Her behavior was always spun into accidents, misunderstandings, or, more often, blamed on me. The emergency room buzzed with late-night activity. As we sat waiting, Dad leaned in close, repeating the story he wanted me to tell. You were carrying laundry. Missed a step. Simple mistake. That's it. When Dr. Sarah Martinez finally entered the room, something about her was different from the doctors we usually saw, those who accepted my parents' version of events without a second glance. She looked directly at me, not at my hovering family. What happened? She asked calmly. I fell down the stairs, I replied, the rehearsed lie bitter in my mouth. Her eyes narrowed just slightly as she glanced at my family, then back at me. I'd like to examine Emma privately, she said with quiet authority. That's not necessary, Dad interjected. Dr. Martinez didn't budge. It's hospital policy for trauma cases. Please wait outside. Once the room emptied, she gently helped me onto the exam table. Now, she said, her voice low and steady, why don't you tell me what really happened? Something about the way she looked at me, steady kind, but no nonsense, made me want to spill everything. But after years of staying silent, the reflex was too strong. I told you, I muttered. I fell. Emma, she said softly, I've worked in emergency medicine for 15 years. I know what a fall looks like. These bruises on your arms. They're grip marks. Someone held you before you hit the ground. Tears welled in my eyes, but I didn't speak. Let's get some x-rays, she said gently. We'll talk more afterward. The scans revealed 3 fractured ribs and a small break in my wrist. But it wasn't the fresh injuries that caused her expression to harden, it was what lay beneath. She pointed to the screen. See these, she said, indicating faint, healed fractures. These are older. They've been broken and healed without proper treatment. I stared at the images, stunned. These tell a story, Emma, she said firmly. And it's not one of clumsiness. As a mandated reporter, I'm legally required to notify the authorities if I suspect abuse. Panic surged through me. No, please, you don't understand. My family has been covering up years of harm, she finished quietly. These injuries go back months, possibly years. You're a medical resident. You know what these scans show. She was right. With clinical clarity, I recognized what I'd been trained to see: chronic abuse. It was all there, in sharp contrast against the X-ray film. Proof of every incident I had been told to forget or deny. "I need to make some calls," Dr. Martinez said, rising. "But you're safe here. Security is outside your room. Your family can't take you home against your will." She left, and I heard my father in the hallway, his voice booming with anger. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel fear at his fury. I felt something else. Hope. The scans had told the story I never could, and someone had finally believed it. The next few hours passed in a haze. Hospital security stood guard outside while Dr. Martinez worked the phones. I could hear the chaos: Dad shouting, Mom trying to calm him down, and Jessica putting on her usual dramatics, sobbing about how I was trying to ruin her life. But they couldn't silence the evidence. Dr. Martinez brought in a specialist, Dr. Thompson, an expert in identifying signs of physical abuse. Together, they walked me through every injury on the scans. "These small fractures," Dr. Thompson explained, pointing at one X-ray, "are classic defensive wounds, likely caused when you try to shield yourself from harm." My hands shook as I stared at the proof of what I had endured. Years of violence, documented in black and white. How had I convinced myself these were normal? How had I let them convince me it was all my fault? Detective Laura Bennett arrived not long after. She had warm eyes, but a firm, no-nonsense manner that made me feel safe. "Take your time," she said, placing a recording device on the table. "Start at the beginning." And so I did. I told her about Jessica, about how the accidents started with little things: shoves, tripping me, slamming doors in my face. How my parents always blamed me, told me to stop provoking her, told me to be more careful. "How come you never left?" she asked gently. "My residency," I said quietly. Staying home was the only way I could afford it, and part of me kept hoping that if I just tried harder, things would get better. Detective Bennett shook her head. "That's what they wanted you to believe. But none of this is your fault." A gentle knock at the door brought a pause to our conversation. Dr. Martinez stepped in, holding a fresh set of scans. "Emma," she said softly, "we found something else." She held up the CT results. "This shows signs of a past concussion, one that was never properly treated. Do you remember when that happened?" "3 months ago," I murmured. "Jessica hit me with a textbook when I wouldn't give her money. Mom told me to sleep it off." Detective Bennett's pen flew across her notepad. "We'll need to include this in the report." Suddenly, voices rose outside. Jessica's shrill protest cut through the hallway. "You can't keep me from my sister. This is insane. Emma, tell them the truth." She tried to shove past a security guard, who immediately blocked her path. Our eyes locked through the narrow window in the door. For the first time, I saw something unexpected in her face. Fear. She knew it was over. The X-rays had stripped away every denial, every lie. No one could cover for her now, not even our parents. The days of blaming everything on my supposed clumsiness or attention-seeking were done. "Miss Mitchell," Detective Bennett called out firmly. "Step back or risk an additional charge, obstruction of a police investigation." Jessica's defiance crumbled. "But I didn't mean." She looked toward our parents in desperation. But they were too consumed with their own unraveling world. Dad was angrily debating with hospital staff. Mom sat off to the side, face buried in her hands, quietly sobbing. Dr. Martinez moved closer to my bedside. "Emma, we'd like to keep you overnight for monitoring. A counselor will visit you as well." "What happens now?" I asked, glancing between her and the detective. "Now," Detective Bennett replied, "we begin building a legal case. The medical imaging shows a clear history of physical abuse. With your statement and hospital documentation, we have enough to press charges." My throat tightened. "Charges? Against Jessica. And potentially your parents," the detective added gently, "for neglecting to protect you and covering up years of harm. Legally, they were obligated to seek care and ensure your safety." The reality sank in like cold water. After all the fear, all the silence, I was finally being heard. All because one doctor refused to ignore what was right in front of her. "You don't have to make all the decisions now," Dr. Martinez said reassuringly. "Focus on healing." We'll help you find somewhere safe to stay after discharge. I have a friend, I said, thinking of Sarah, my closest friend from med school, who'd been urging me for months to live with her. Detective Bennett smiled slightly. Good. A support network is important right now. As they stepped out, I could still hear the familiar voices down the hall, but for the first time they didn't scare me. The truth was out, and this time it couldn't be swept under the rug. I reached for my phone and typed a message to Sarah. Is that spare room still open? Her reply came almost instantly. Always. For as long as you need. Want to tell me what's going on? I looked up at the light board, where the x-rays still glowed. I replied, It's a long story, but I'm finally leaving. 6 months later, I stood in Sarah's kitchen, stirring my morning coffee before heading to the hospital. A newspaper sat on the counter. One headline caught my attention. Local woman sentenced in family assault case. Jessica had been given 2 years of probation, along with mandatory therapy, and a restraining order that prohibited her from contacting me. My parents hadn't escaped unscathed either. Dad was forced to step down from his role on the hospital board after the cover-ups came to light. Mom's once pristine reputation in our tight-knit community had collapsed under the weight of the truth. Both had accepted plea deals, probation, community service, and court-mandated counseling. You okay? Sarah asked, entering the kitchen. She'd been my steady anchor through everything. Therapy, court hearings, and the long nights when flashbacks kept me awake. Yeah, I said, and for the first time, I truly meant it. My phone vibrated. A message from Dr. Martinez. She'd become a mentor to me, guiding me not only in my career, but also through recovery. Ready for your presentation today? That afternoon, I was scheduled to speak to incoming residents about identifying abuse and why it matters to speak up. My own case, including selected x-rays, shared with permission, would be part of the talk. You're amazing, you know that? Sarah said as I grabbed my presentation materials. Not just for surviving, but for using your story to help others. She was right. Since that night, I'd rediscovered my voice and used it in ways I never imagined. I'd helped establish new abuse reporting protocols for our hospital's emergency department and trained staff to recognize the hidden signs. A few days earlier, I ran into Jessica in the hospital parking lot. It wasn't by chance. She was waiting. Emma, she called out from a safe distance, beyond what the restraining order allowed. Can we talk? I stopped and looked at her, really looked. She seemed smaller now, less threatening. I can't, I said. You know the order. I know, she said quickly. I got your letter. I'd sent it as part of my own healing. Not to reopen anything, but to acknowledge our shared past and to wish her healing. I'm sorry, she said, tears in her eyes. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I truly am. The therapy's helping. I'm learning why I did what I did and how badly I hurt you. I'm glad you're getting help, I replied honestly. But I need you to respect my boundaries. She nodded, wiping her eyes. You're strong, Emma. Braver than I ever was. As she turned and walked away, I felt a weight lift. Her words didn't erase the past, but they finally acknowledged it. I was never the weak one. In the hospital conference room, I set up my laptop for the presentation. Dr. Martinez took a seat in the front row, offering a proud smile. The room gradually filled with eager young residents, faces that reminded me of my own a year ago. 6 months ago, I began, clicking the first x-ray onto the screen. I was the patient, not the doctor. I paused. What you're about to see is more than just a series of injuries. It's the story of silence, denial, and the way families can normalize violence. I walked them through each scan, each missed opportunity, each invisible scream. As medical professionals, we may be the only voice for someone who's been silenced, I said. Afterward, a young woman approached me, her hands trembling slightly. Dr. Mitchell, she said quietly, your story had helped me make sense of something I saw in a patient recently. Trust your instincts, I told her. Do what I wish someone had done for me. That evening, I returned home, Sarah's house, now my home. Tired but at peace. A letter waited on the kitchen counter. Another from my parents. They'd been writing often, trying, in their own way, to make amends. Sometimes I read them. Sometimes I didn't. Today I opened it. Dear Emma, we watched your interview about the new hospital protocols. We're deeply sorry for not protecting you, for failing you in every way. Your courage forced us to confront our mistakes. I folded the paper. The rest could wait. Their remorse wasn't mine to carry anymore. I was rebuilding my life, one where my story mattered, where the truth was no longer buried. The x-rays that once revealed my pain now hung in my office, not as a reminder of trauma, but as a symbol of resilience. They didn't just expose what happened to me. They gave me back something I thought was gone forever. My power. Sarah had left dinner warming in the oven and a note on the counter. You're not just surviving anymore. You're thriving. Looking around at the life I'd built, I smiled. She was right. The x-rays had spoken. And this time, the world was listening.